So, I will be talking about hidden gems in Angular because there is a lot of features, there is a lot of things being shipped right now and even in past, and some of them are foreshadowing some very useful things that you can be using today. Since Angular 17, I believe, the oldest thing that I'm showing. And it will be a lot of different stuff, some from routers, some from directives, different parts. Feel free to take pictures, but in the end there will be anyway a QR code for the whole presentation, so all code could be copy-pasted, no worries. Let's start. I'm Vojtech. It is my 4th time here in NG India. It's a great place to come. I look forward every day. I'll hope I'll be coming next year too. We'll see, because I'm becoming a father, so it will be a little bit more hard. But yeah, I'm a GDE on Angular. I like TypeScript, especially TypeScript, but also JavaScript, and I organize a meetup in Czech Republic, which is called NG Beer, which is a lot of beer and some Angular. So there are small things, but these small things really make a difference. Let's start with one small thing that you can start using today, and that is ng content fallback. If you ever used ng content, there is this little neat thing that you can now do, and that is you could put a default. For example, you can use a title like this. So if the title isn't provided, there will be a default. This wasn't possible since, I don't know, maybe Angular 18. Now we have a default. Okay, we can also have something like this. This is a pipe. The only purpose of this pipe is the return input st. So you cast a type in TypeScript. How can you use this? Well, in your component, you state the types that you want to use, because sometimes you need a different type in a template to properly type check. And then you can, for example, have a switch like this. You know that item has a type name because, for example, it is coming from a GraphQL, or your backend is doing it this way. And this is an example from an application that is an eShop. And in the list of this eShop, you can have product, you can have advertisement, and there could also be a category preview. You don't really know what is in the list because you ng4 over it. So this is a great way to actually cast the types correctly, because the case makes absolutely sure that the type name is the product or advertisement or category. You can cast it this way. Very neat, so your types and templates are aligned and work correctly. Okay, jump into routing. There is many features now in the routing that support great things that you can do, especially with server-side rendering. I will be showing some things that are related to server-side rendering and only work with the correct server-side rendering setup. That doesn't mean that you have to server-side render the whole application. That's what I'll be trying to explain, that sometimes you just can like pre-render parts of it, or just have server-side rendering on specific things that actually require it. Also, there is later on a talk on hydration, which I recommend you watch, because some of the things that I'll be explaining here maybe will be more clear why they are useful. So let's say the basic routing. Everyone knows this. You know, this is a lot of code. You have your ng module because you haven't migrated yet and you still use modules. You have your app routes with all the load component, import, then you select the component. Same thing with load children module, then you select the module. You have your routes like this. Yeah, it's a lot of code, a lot of things to maintain. What if I told you that it could look something like, it can be very simplified. And the way how you simplify it is that you first of all go to standalone. Then when you are on standalone, you add this little keyword default, export default class component. So you add this little keyword, and that means that suddenly you don't have to do this whole thing. You can just write this load component and the dynamic import, and it will work by default, thanks to the default. That means that the same routing that we saw as the first thing will basically look like this. You don't need the ng module anymore. You just put an array of routes to the provide router, and here you have a simple import to the component if you have a simple home component, or if your whole platform is a bunch of routes, then you can create routing like this, which is again a very simple array that loads the individual components. And you can see the difference here. If you are loading component, you write load component. If you are loading children, more routes, you load children. Very easy. Nothing, not a rocket science. And thanks to this, things can be much more simpler, and it is a great case to actually be like, why would I migrate to standalone? Because like, if you just move your components, it might, it brings a huge benefit. Things are smaller, less things to maintain, but you are not always thinking, maybe I should remove all of these modules that I have in the project, because there can be a lot. And I've been in huge projects where modules are like half of your files, and the only thing they do is they export and import stuff, and not really something actually meaningful. It is a completely different case if your modules actually do a lot of providers and orchestrate code, but most of the time they don't. And this is a great case when they don't actually need to exist. Okay, hybrid rendering. What is hybrid rendering? It basically means that you can choose on what device or on what stage the rendering is happening. The explanation is, or the simple explanation for my case here, is we will have three. One is that is happening on client. Second is that is happening on server. That's easy. Server and server side, client side. And then there is also another thing which is called pre-rendering. When is happening pre-rendering? In build. So that is build. It is a great case. You don't need, you do a server-side render setup, and you actually don't need a server to render all of stuff because it happens on build. When is it useful? Well, imagine that you have a block. Yeah, you build a block, you have a lot of articles. The article text doesn't really change that much, and if it does, you are probably fine with running a build again. So that's a great case. You can pre-render all of the pages on build time. Or you have a very complicated platform that has all this, everything locked behind a sign-in, no one can really get in. But this platform also has a home page, and this platform also has like a legal pages, like a contact with some information, and then, I don't know, terms and service and return policy and all of this stuff that you usually have to put in. And they link in footer, and it is really nice if they are like SEO friendly and Google can discover it. So a great case for this. You just pre-render all of these pages on build because they will be ready. You don't need a server-side rendering for it. It can be pre-rendered. So how does it look like? You just provide pre-rendering like this. You provide a server routing for the server where you have the routes. And the server routes is a special case of a route which has more configuration to it. And the configuration can look something like this. So let's go from the top. This is a default path. We say, okay, on this default, just use the client side because we don't care. We don't, maybe we don't even know what the default is because it reroutes to different things automatically. So let's just use client for it. No need to overthink it. But about us is always the same and it rarely changes. So let's pre-render it on build. Dashboard. Dashboard is very complicated because every user has its own thing in dashboard. Let's use server for it because this configuration is safe somewhere and in database, and we can show it works. Then there is a video. Yeah, there are video details with like YouTube videos embedded in it. You don't need to pre-render or server-side render this at all. Why? Because the video wouldn't even load on a server. It's completely useless to pre-render or server-side render it. Let's just leave this to client, and then everything else we're like, okay, everything else makes sense on a server. So let's do it this way. You can go very deep in a route structure like this, configure everything separately. Okay, then imagine that we have a or you don't have to imagine, this is a very specific example. So you have products. These products has a list of IDs, yeah, or articles for your blog post, but products are pretty good use case. So you don't know all of these IDs. Like there is this definition and this ID can be whatever. So how does the pre-rendering know what this ID could be? We can provide this function, and this function basically uses the product service from my Angular, like any other front-end component would use it, gets all the product IDs, returns it as a list. We map that list to a object array that looks like this, ID string, return it, and pre-rendering automatically picks it up and knows that when I'll be pre-rendering this, I need these at least 3, probably hundreds or thousands of pages pre-rendered. This is amazing for, as I said, blog posts. This is amazing for everything else. I have a setup where I use this in a way that on build time, I pre-render all of the blogs, like all of the articles, and then there is also a hook from the CMS that hits a GitHub action every time the article changes in the CMS. You know, someone who is just doing the editing, notice a mistake or something, they edit this in a specifically contentful, and as they hit publish, it hits the GitHub action and it pre-renders the specific page again. Pretty neat stuff. Okay, input data. A lot of stuff related to inputs. Yeah, that's why I grouped it together. Inputs are very powerful, especially now with signals, but I specifically made a choice that if I can, I will be showing you both cases, old and new input, just so you know most of these things work for both. So there is no reason you think, it's signal, I don't need to use it, or I don't have it, so I don't use it. No, they work for both, they are amazing, you should start using them pretty soon. As I said, examples are copy-pastable. So we can have a value transform. Any input can now have a transform function. This is specifically a signal, and you can provide to it or put to it a transform function which accepts Boolean on string and transforms it automatically, which is a great thing if you have a component like checkbox, because you used to, like, you needed to write things like disabled, you know, and then you would have to be like disabled, or disabled true. Now you can just use a shorthand. Why is this useful? Well, because you can do other things too. For example, you can create, you have a chart component, and that chart can have different sizes, yeah? And you can bind it this way because you know it will be either SM, medium, or large, or X large, and then you can map it to an actual value that you use somewhere in template or in CSS. And now that we are at CSS, you can also do this. You can bind it directly to host binding, via host binding to style. So you can, your component can now like dynamically size the host depending on what size do you specify. And it's pretty neat. It automatically transforms. And the same thing works also with signals. It is, I would say, even nicer, even shorter. You can bind it like this. Yeah, and it will automatically react. You don't have to worry about, will the data be there, will it change, do I have to call detect changes or something? No, it will just work, that's it. Okay, next one, route and input. You can combine the routes and inputs. How many of you actually use, Michael is already, his hands up, okay. How many of you actually use things like router parameters or query parameters in routes? Yeah. Do you synchronize like when you have a form, do you synchronize the route? That's a pretty nice thing. Okay, some. Good. So, did you know that you could actually bind the route parameters to the inputs? Yeah, did you know? Some did. Very little people, like surprisingly little. I'm glad I included it. So you can write this into your configuration. Yeah, pictures, good. And now this will automatically work. And by this, I literally mean that the ID that you write into your routes will automatically bind to the input. And if you don't use signal inputs and are still on the old ones, it also work with the decorators. So product ID will bind to product ID like this. It will just work. Well, the only thing you need is this one line into your router configuration. Yeah. What can you do with this? Well, now that we know that we can bind input to router param and that we can also use router input transform, we can first of all have input. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So we can. Not only that it binds to params from the route config, it also binds to query params. Yeah. So if you use query param, for example, page is a very used parameter. You just paginate all of the products in the list, whatever, and you can auto bind this too. It will pick it up. You can also send a default, because it is quite common with the page that pages start from 1, not 0, and you can do it this way, and as soon as someone has the page 42 in the route, it will automatically react. And now that we know we can do this, we are thinking, but what type the page will be? Well, it will be string, because query params are always string. And that's not very convenient. We would have to write a bunch of transformation. Well, now that I said the word transformation, what can I do? I can use input transform. So I can write something like this, and it will auto-transform the parameter to the correct number value. And not only it transforms to number, this is a function, so you can literally write whatever logic you want there. You could also use a shorthand and just put a number here. But you also get a default of number 1 as if the page isn't provided, which is again a very desired and very neat thing to have, because from that point you basically once I learned that this exists, I could remove 20 lines from many of my components just because this works automatically. Okay, we can start in template, as I first showed the cast pipe, which was, in my opinion, a pretty easy solution to some of the problems that all could happen in the templates with typing. And we could also start enforcing types in a different way. And one of the things I like to do is that if you use third-party libraries, for example, Swiper.js. Yeah, you use Swiper for things to swipe. It is a web element. The latest API of Swiper.js is a web element, and the web element doesn't really support any typing in the bindings. Like if you do attribute binding to a web element, it is any, and it is not very good that it is any. So what you can actually do, and this is a specific example with the Swiper.js, that you can create a very dumb directive that just knows that this Swiper container has a attribute config, and it has a required input config, which is a Swiper options. And from now on, you have a type-safe binding in Swiper.js. This is the only thing you need for it. Then you can take this a little bit further. I also have a different snippet, which is even better than this, but it would be too complicated for the talk, and I only have a few minutes left, so I'm not switching to it. But you could also continue from this input and use, for example, transform and automatically do the init of the Swiper.js, so the whole thing can continue and be very, very much type safe and nice. Okay, on the type safe directives, I also have an article. You can visit it. Again, the link is in the slides if you get the slides. And this article is all about creating very similar directive that works for the end-to-end selectors. So if you are writing end-to-end tests with Cypress, Playwright, whatever, you sometimes do, or always do, that you write selector IDs in the component templates. Like every HTML element ideally has some kind of ID. you can create very type-safe solutions for these IDs, so both your tests and templates don't break. Okay, and one of the last things will be router and view transitions, this is a very great feature. This feature has a great impact. You can configure it to a very detailed. There are great sources. I will link them on what can you do. But I will show you very specific and very simple thing. You literally need one line to improve all of your applications today, tomorrow. And the line is this. Once you write this little line into your router configuration, the router transitions will automatically start to appear. There is a default router transition that is like a fade in, fade out, very, very neat, very simple. I will actually show you on the short demo. I wouldn't even call it demo. This is a website of our product that me and Michael are developing, creating. And as you can see, if I click on frequently asked questions or features, it jumps. It's not nice. So let's improve this. Let's hit enter and let's do with view transitions. Let's save it. Let's wait. Now it's nice. Yeah, so I'm done for the day, you know, pull requests, I can go home. Thank you. So this was my demo. Yeah, that was it. There is a very nice video from ngConf. I definitely recommend you watch it. I watched it last night. Pretty good stuff. Amazing configuration that you can do to the view transitions. But as I said, the only thing that you need tomorrow is the one line. Then you can tweak it to do whatever crazy stuff you want, but the one line already works. And yeah, this didn't load because I'm out of internet. And last thing I wanna tell you, and I mean this shout out, I started with, there are modules probably still in your apps. There are other things like you don't use signals yet, you don't use inject yet, you do not use, I don't know, add if, you still use ngIf. There is no reason you actually stay on all of these old ways how to do stuff, because Angular is maintaining and putting a lot of effort into migrations, and I totally recommend visiting this page because there is currently 9 officially maintained migrations. All of them have specific sub-migrations that will help you move to the latest features very easily. You don't have to migrate the whole project. You can go, you know, thing by thing, component by component. Every time you touch a new component or old one, just do the migration. There is no reason new component shouldn't be on signals. There is also no reason that the new components shouldn't be on the latest template control flow. So start using it. You will benefit greatly. I think that's it. I saved 5 minutes. So thank you for your time. This is the presentation.